All right, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Today is Tuesday, October 10th. This is the Finance and Governance Committee. I'm Joel Clark, Vice Chair, representing Denver's Lucky District 7, and we'll do introductions of members of council.
Councilwoman Kniech at large.
Councilman Paul Lopez, West Denver, District 3.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Paul Cashman, South Denver, District 6. As you know, the very heart of South Denver.
Mary Beth Sussman, District 5. Good afternoon, Chairman.
Shelley Smith, Committee Staff.
Great. We only have one item on the agenda today, and that is a briefing on the Green Roof Initiative. And so I believe we are starting with the proponents of the bill. You have 20 minutes. Please come on up. And I will cut you off at about 20 minutes so we can stay online. So if you could keep it to that, and then we'll do questions after. So go ahead and go through your whole presentation, and we'll save the questions for when you're done.
All right. Thank you very much.
And if you could first introduce yourselves for everybody watching on TV.
Sure. I'm Brandon Riethheimer. I'm the campaign manager and founder of the Denver Green Roof Initiative.
My name is Andy Creeth, president of Green Roofs Colorado, a green roof installation, design, and maintenance company. Started in Denver 10 years ago.
So I'll just kind of give you my spiel real quick. So this year, last time, Bernie Sanders told us change does not come from the top and that we must get active at the local level to make the changes we need. And I knew that Bernie's message was more important now than ever. So for me, nothing is more important than climate change because all the issues we talk about every day mean nothing if we don't have a healthy planet to live on. So I said to myself, how can I make a difference? How can I make change at the local level? So I started doing research with the question in mind, what was Denver already doing for climate and the environment? And on the surface, it looked like a lot was being done. The Denver Office of Sustainability was created through an executive order by Mayor Hancock, and together attainable goals were set for 2020. But once I started to dig deeper, I realized nothing was being done to achieve these goals. And this past December, the City Auditor's Office released a report outlining just that. For 4 years, the Office of Sustainability was given no resources, no authority, not even a phone number. This is a big problem. As environmentally friendly as we are in the city isn't so much. We have unswimmable lakes, creeks, rivers. We currently rank 11th worst in air quality, specifically for particulate and ozone pollution, and we're third worst in the nation for urban heat island. Urban heat island is when a city is significantly hotter than surrounding areas because of all the buildings and the pavement. And this is very dangerous as each year continues to get hotter from climate change. While doing all this research, I stumbled across green roofs. And green roofs are essentially gardens on roofs, and while they sound pretty, green roofs have many benefits other than just aesthetics. Green roofs clean our air, they manage stormwater so well they are rated a best management practice by the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District. They create biodiversity for birds, bees, and other insects. They increase a building's energy efficiency by reducing heat transfer through the roof. The list goes on and on. So why doesn't every building already have a green roof? The answer is cost. Green roofs cost about 2.5 times more than a traditional roof. However, they last 4 to 5 times as long. So the builder is essentially paying 2.5 times more for something that lasts 4 to 5 times longer. That plus the added energy savings makes for a sound investment. But because it costs more up front, developers usually choose not to do it because it hurts their overall budget. So with this information, I knew green roofs were a simple solution to the problems that Denver faces now and that Denver will face in the future. So my friends and I set out with one mission in mind, to place solar and green roofs on large rooftops across the city. Next, we looked to other cities doing these things, cities like San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Toronto, and New York City. But Toronto has been doing this since 2008, and they went about it in an interesting way. They created a building code requiring green roofs on any new building 25,000 square feet or greater. So what we did was we adopted their building code and made changes to make it fit Denver. We had lawyers review all the bill, and we moved forward to the next step. We chose what to do as a citizen-initiated ordinance, which is why we're here today. We started with 5 people, and we've grown to over 60 volunteers. These 60 volunteers spent countless hours canvassing parks and public events, collecting signatures from only Denver County residents, and together we collected nearly 8,000 signatures, 3,000 more than necessary, and we did this without one single paid petitioner, a feat that we were told could not be possible. So what is it exactly? Our initiative would create a new building code that would require any building over 25,000 square feet to dedicate a portion of their rooftop to solar or green roofs. This won't raise taxes. The cost of these upgrades rely on the builders and the developers. This doesn't raise rent. A building's property value is increased, and these upgrades increase a building's energy efficiency and longevity of the roof, lowers overall operating costs for the longevity of the building. This will affect any building over 25,000 square feet, but a building may ask for an exemption if a building couldn't support the weight, if it couldn't afford the maintenance, maybe it's already Energy Star rated, maybe it's a historic building. We understand there's many reasons a building could need an exemption, and that will be left to city planning to decide, but we wanted to ensure that options were available. This measure also creates technical standards, and the mayor will appoint a technical advisory group to ensure that these rooftops are being built properly and soundly and to ensure compliance. This does not affect the entire rooftop, only a percentage, and that percentage begins at 20% on buildings 25,000 to 50,000 square feet and gradually increase every 50,000 square feet until it caps at 60% for buildings 200,000 square feet or more. So a building would have to incorporate 20 to 60% of their rooftop depending on the size of the building. The larger the building, the more coverage required. So we at the Denver Green Roof believe that Initiative 300 is imperable to a habitable future in this great city, and we are not alone. We have endorsements from the Environmental and Energy Study Group and Public Policy Committee of the Denver Democrats. We have endorsements from 350, Colorado Native Plant Society, Grow West, and Zeppelin Development earlier today told me that this is a no-brainer for the environment and to elevate the quality of design in our city. So I'll let Andy kind of give you the rundown on some more detailed facts of the initiative.
Thanks. Thanks, Brandon. I'm just going to talk a little bit, repeat some of the things that Brandon said, just to make sure you have a better understanding of what exactly this policy is. This is the picture of Community College of Denver. We've been building green roofs in Denver for the last 10 years, our first being a huge site at Denver Botanical Gardens over the Mordecai Children's Garden, which is over a parking structure. They've been doing research on that for the last 5 years. And we found some really interesting results that would help the city of Denver. Again, just to make sure Denver, we want Denver to be a resilient and sustainable city. It is ranked 3rd in urban heat island effect by the Climate Central. We're ranked 11th worst in air quality by the American Lung Association. We have significant urban flooding and drainage issues already, and hail damage claims will rise with climate change as we go forward, as we noticed this past storm. Green roofs, again, they absorb and slow stormwater. They increase the waterproofing lifespan. They lower the building's effect on urban heat island effect. They protect rooftops from hail damage. A good example of that is during the hailstorm we had here in May, all of our roofs lost a couple plants at most, when all other buildings lost entire rooftops and have been closed for now roughly a year. We save energy, and green roofs save energy and water. They provide space for urban agriculture. They increase solar panel efficiency by cooling down the roof surface. They beautify spaces and aids biodiversity within a city. And then they create multiple jobs. Our latest analysis on jobs had, over the next 15 years, creating over 20,000 jobs in the city of Denver. We'll have an analysis out this week. We've shared with you on your website an analysis by San Francisco's planning department that showed all these numbers and how they got them. We're doing the same analysis here in the city of Denver, and we'll have those this week. Again, green roofs do not raise property taxes or rent. They do not cause leaks on rooftops. They do not increase any sort of fire danger, and they do not cause dust or any sort of smog issues. Again, the I-300 Denver Green Roof Initiative, they mandate green roofs and solar for buildings larger than 25,000 square feet for new construction and roof renovations. And again, this 25,000 square feet is the volume of the building. That roof space may only be 5,000 square feet. We've seen some numbers that come up that green roofs add 30% to the cost of a building. No, they add $25 a square foot roughly to the rooftop space of a building, but for the building itself, say it was a 25,000 square foot roof, a building with 5,000 square foot roof, that would only be $1 a square foot additional cost. It only covers a percentage of the rooftop based on the building square footage, not the entire roof. It exempts buildings with conditions to not allow for green roofs or solar, as Brandon mentioned. There will be a technical advisory council, and it aids in the 2020 sustainability goals for clean air and water. And I wanted to make a show here. This is the 2020 goals that we've been looking at here.
If you could grab, as you're walking away, nobody on TV can hear you, so if you want to grab that and just go to the mic by the podium or somewhere,
hold
so
this?
everybody who's watching can still hear you.
Great, I appreciate that. So with the 2020 goals in mind, we're looking at how green roofs will affect those goals. This is a huge aid to the city. We affect on air quality, climate, energy. We can produce food on rooftops. It helps human health in the cities themselves. Water quality is a huge player, and water quantity, and we increase those jobs. So all of those different things can be done with a single type of technology. And so that's where we are with green roofs. Now Brandon's going to talk a little bit about the history of who we talked to kind of coming into this process.
So 2009 to 2012, there were some symposiums from Girl West. It's an organization. They tried to push some policy through for incentives back when Green Print Denver was a thing. That essentially went nowhere, kind of fizzled out. Back in March of 2015, there was a cool roof provision that tried to get put into the building code, from my understanding. That was shut down by developers. And so back in November, I began reaching out. I think I emailed everyone on city council trying to figure out what are the proper steps that I could take to get some, I don't know, to move forward on this. And everyone pretty much referred me to sustainability and city planning. I started first with sustainability. They kind of directed me to CPD. So I set a meeting with CPD, spoke with Scott Prisco and Jill Golich, and they shut me down pretty quick, said that they wouldn't support a mandate. They also said that they wouldn't approve any kind of building code revisions because it had just been reviewed. They update it every 5 years or so. So I wasn't really sure what to do. I tried to reach out, seemed to just get the door shut in my face. So we kind of decided that, we feel that this needed to be done now, not 10 years now, not 5 years from now. So we started the process of the citizen-initiated ordinance. We met with the city attorney and executive director on January 27th, who reviewed our ordinance language. Some revisions were recommended, and we made those revisions. And we went to the next step to collect signatures. We did that for 6 months. Finally got approved September 10th. And then here we are today. We're just continuing our outreach efforts to raise awareness about this initiative.
And this is something that's been told us in multiple meetings, that we didn't collaborate in the beginning. And we came to the city, we came to other groups, and we wanted to collaborate and get a consensus before this came through. But this left us no other choice if we were going to do this in the next election cycle. Other things that are interesting, a couple of the green roof costs that we want to talk about. There are higher upfront costs, but we do have a return on investment on most green roofs that we build in the city of 6.2 years. There is additional maintenance for rooftop vegetation, but not much more than is happening on a typical white roof or black roof that's in the city that has to be cleaned and maintained for them to get their proper areas. We lower building operational costs, though. We lower energy charges. We lower stormwater fees. And one of the biggest that we found in the city of Denver is we actually lower the stormwater detention systems, the actual mechanical systems that slow down stormwater for buildings. We found this on the EPA building. There is a 25,000 square foot roof right on the top of the EPA building. And it may not be the prettiest roof that's up there at this point, but what it does is it performs for the building. It keeps energy costs down for that building, and it holds stormwater. And what they were able to do is they were able to downsize their detention system and not dig deeper within the city to do a detention system. They were able to increase their parking spaces in that area. So now they charge for those parking spaces, which used to be held for a detention center, which could be upwards of $100,000 for that building. So they were able to save money, get an initial return on investment directly from that city building. And so we've seen that happen multiple different times. And then we also see this increasing value of the building itself and the surrounding areas. And these are just a couple of pictures, again, of rooftops here in Denver. They're actively monitored, they're actively watched and maintained, and they look really nice for the city. This is the Community College of Denver, 17,000 square foot green roof. Student classrooms look down on it rather than a membrane-based roof system that's below. That's it in the summertime. This is the picture of it in the spring. Pretty looking place. We grow food on rooftops. This is the Anschutz Medical Center in Aurora, where we grow food for the kitchen that's down below. And if we're ever to get to that 2020 plan of 20% food, we're going to need to use rooftops to get there. This is a picture of the winter at Denver Botanical Gardens. Again, the Mordecai Children's Garden, something that's in our city that's been there for a long time that we know can be effective. And this is where Urban Flood Control District got their numbers for retaining 60 to 80% of water for every year for their stormwater drains. They have a test center there, so it retains 60 to 80% of the water. That's a huge amount of water that's not entering our waterways and having to go through our stormwater drainage systems. So the more green infrastructure we have like this, the less gray infrastructure we need to pay for in the future. Again, it's a huge cost savings for the city. And this is one you may not even know. This is the REI, right downtown Denver. This is a intensive green roof over the parking structure. You would walk up there, you'd never know. It's usable space. You can park underneath the ground. And it's providing huge benefits for the REI store itself. So that's what I have.
I just wanted to mention too, we've been reaching out to house districts and registered neighborhood organizations since we started this, and there's a huge amount of public support. Even when we were out collecting signatures, large majority of people were very supportive of this. A lot of the questions were, why aren't we doing this already? We have these flat roofs, we're not utilizing them. We should mitigate the ground that we're losing from these buildings back on the rooftop. We also have a town hall this Saturday at the Washington Street Community Center. We're also hosting a rally at Skyline Park Sunday. And we're always looking for more volunteers, so if you guys want to help out. Thanks.
All right, you ready for questions?
Sure.
All right, Councilman Cashman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I find this really an interesting possibility. So tell me more about the exemptions. As I've done the research on your bill, you mention exemptions where you can't tell, what is that about?
So we just wanted to make sure that there was room for leeway. When we were going through these processes, we've heard from people about, oh, what if it's a nonprofit, can't afford it, or if it's a school and can't afford the off-season maintenance. So we built some exemptions in them based on the revisions that the city attorney and the executive director of city council recommended. So we included any buildings that are already Energy Star efficient. We've included I believe historic buildings are in there. But ultimately what it says is it's up to city planning to decide if they want to grant that exemption. I mean, if there's a great architectural roof that's being built, we don't want it to be limiting for the growth in the city. We want there to be some wiggle room so that everyone can foresee their designs.
But it's detailed in the bill itself?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing I'm wondering, so I read that in Germany, I think it is, where they've been doing this for decades, that the insurance companies give a deduction for green roofs. Is that correct?
That is correct, because it protects the rooftops
And
and hail damage in other ways.
So has any place in the U.S. taken to doing that?
Originally working with Travelers Insurance and State Farm, we were able to get deductions on rooftop insurance costs. They have not come out with that fully as a policy, but on individual policies, they have.
Okay. That's all I've got for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Council President Brooks.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, thank you guys, and thanks for your hard work on this. I think here's just a couple questions. One, I appreciate you looking at the other cities. I heard you say Toronto was the one that you kind of modeled this after. Are there any other kind of cities within the United States that do the mandate, and when did they start?
Sure. So San Francisco actually is the most current one. Do we provide, I don't know if you guys received, yes. So there's actually a San Francisco model of cost-benefit analysis that we've provided with you guys if you want to take a look at. And then also, most places have done, so Washington, D.C. does a very stringent stormwater management policy that essentially requires green roofs. A lot of other places mainly focused on incentives, though.
Yeah. So that's what I want to kind of hone in on. So San Francisco is the only one that you know that has a specific mandate. It sounds like D.C. is sort of a mandate through other means.
No,
but-
it is a DC is a stormwater mandate. It's protecting the Chesapeake Bay there, so it is a stormwater.
Yeah, but it's not a green roof.
No, I
mandate.
see what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah, that's
It's
what I'm
part of their
talking
overall plan, yeah.
about. Got it.
Of course.
So, can you tell me a little bit more about San Francisco? Yeah, or do you not have, I mean, if you
I
don't-
honestly don't know the
Okay.
exact details of
Yep.
each bullet point. It's really new. It just passed in January, I believe.
The point I want to get to is more the 25,000 square feet. So the concerns I have is, we have affordable housing developments. I have affordable housing developments in District 9 that are much larger than 25,000 square feet. We have some facilities, our rec center, Carla Madison, that we're just about to get off the ground and could barely raise the money to get, and so all of these things add fees, and while it's a worthwhile cause, I get nervous about those. And so, and just to drill down a little bit further on CPD's exemption, they will come up with the criteria. You guys give no guidance to that.
We've given basic guidance within the bill itself, within the initiative itself, but it has left it open so that CPD can come up with their own as they see necessary through the buildings that are coming up through the pipeline.
Okay, thank you.
And then, for operational costs will come down for those facilities. So as an owner from the building, we talked to a couple different developers that do low-income housing with that, and they had the same responses as you do. They want to make sure that their operational costs are lower, which they'll do. So we're doing a cost-benefit analysis specifically for a 12,000 square foot roof in Denver that's already existing to show what that's going to come out with. So that's going to happen in the next 10 days.
Okay.
So we'll send that to you.
And San Francisco kind of addressed those concerns with affordable housing in their development too, because obviously rents are high there as well. And they were able to kind of put them at ease with the show on return on investment and the lowering overall operating costs long term. It really is a long-term benefit.
Okay.
And for long-term financing, we're looking at the COPACE program that's in place. It's an energy efficiency project, so you can get at least 20% of the total building costs, development costs paid for by COPACE in a finance deal with them, or they'll also, if it's over $100,000, it actually could be 100% of the building financed for them.
All right, Councilwoman Sussman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would be great if we all had green roofs and everything was so lovely. But just kind of following up on what Councilman Brooks says, the mandate is what worries me. Because you're talking about schools that want to replace their roofs. You're talking about city buildings that want to replace their roofs. Or roofs. Roofs? Roofs. And if the money isn't there, I mean, I just don't see how that's going to even be possible. And then, just thinking about HOAs, you say it's not going to raise rents, but if suddenly an HOA needs to replace its roof and they don't have the money, or maybe it's not an HOA, it's an apartment house, how can you say that the rents won't rise? I mean, that they'd have to get the money from somewhere. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So ultimately, like we said, long-term operational costs would come down, so they would have to do the initial investment, but we're pretty certain that rents are determined on the marketplace, not so much the cost of improvements. Buildings have to replace like windows, things like that all the time. They don't typically raise rents on tenants because they have to do a regular replacement. And this doesn't make the replacement happen immediately. This is at the time of normal roof replacements. We're talking 10, 15 years on average for roof replacement. And then there are the exemptions for the schools, things like that, and that we would want to take into account.
If it's a really valuable thing to do, why wouldn't we let the market just take care of that? I mean, for example, I know solar is great, and I looked into doing solar on my house, but it would take me about 20 years to make back the difference. And but if this has such a good ROI, why wouldn't we just let the market do that? And people would just, if you have so much support for it, why wouldn't we just allow the market to take care of it?
Well, we're starting to see it a little bit more like Zeppelin development, but ultimately these buildings have been asked to do benchmarking through CPACE, and pretty much it was up to them to come forward with those reports, and almost nobody participated in that program, and it now Energize Denver is requiring benchmarking. So it's not so much that they just don't want to. It's more upfront cost, and when given the opportunity, they've shown that they don't want to take the steps forward. So that's another reason why we felt the mandate was necessary. And also that green roofs, to reach the maximum benefit potential for urban heat island and things like that, you need these rooftops to be everywhere and not just on select buildings to get those energy, to get the heat to drop, to get energy consumption to drop. It has to be seen.
I can't imagine a developer who's developing wouldn't be interested in the return on investment voluntarily if it were actually as solid as you have
Sure.
explained.
I think some of that just comes to education. I don't think there's a lot of common knowledge about it here in Denver. But those numbers that we're pulling are from the US GSA report done in 2010.
So an education program might work just as well to get the roofs done
Maybe,
rather than a mandate.
maybe.
Well, there could be benefits to that, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You all done, Councilwoman?
I am.
Back to Councilman Brooks?
Yeah.
Council President.
No,
Council
no.
President.
Thank you, Council
E,
President.
Council President.
Pro Tem. Just going back to saying that there was no requirements for CPD, left up to CPD to kind of make the requirements. You have letters A through D talking about some of the things that must be met. And if they're not met, there's a cash in lieu construction of the green roof. And so talk a little bit about that, because you didn't really share that when I was asking about these exemptions.
Sure. So that's something modeled after after Toronto, that they've seen worked well there to kind of push that forward. If buildings aren't doing this, the whole point of this is for climate change, for energy consumption. Like 60% of our downtown buildings are consuming the energy in Denver. So it's important that some of those funds that would be going towards energy efficiency are then diverted somewhere back, because I believe they're diverted to the Office of Sustainability.
Okay. Well, I just want to, I think it's important just to point out that that there are some stipulations, that it's not just 100% left over to CPD. And it looks like there's 4 of them, and then there's 3 requirements of cash in lieu constructions for the green roof. So.
Sure, and it's also that board that gets created. They would be working with you guys to kind of improve that as it goes along. We understand that not every bill is perfect and that it might need working. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councilman Cashman.
Yeah, I just wanted to, point out, I mean, we have mandates all the time that increase the cost of construction. It's called a building code. And because we decide we need buildings to be safe. And I look at this and in the same way, in that we're looking at what do we need to do to meet our environmental goals for the safety of our community. So I think, like I said, it's intriguing. It's intriguing. When we met a year ago, probably, maybe a little bit more, and to be perfectly honest, I just kind of let it go like this. So what's this guy, green roofs, what's this guy talking about? And the more I've read about it, the more intrigued I am. So, I'm not quite ready to give it a go-ahead, but it is really intriguing. And for me, thus far, the benefits seem to outweigh my concerns, so.
Any other questions? I have a few to wrap us up. So talk to me a little bit. I'm confused about the solar and the percentage of green roof. Somebody wants to do 100% solar. Does this prevent them from doing that? Can you do solar in lieu? I mean, you talk green roofs and energy production. How did you balance that and what you put forward?
So that was one of the concerns that was raised with CPD, was that there wasn't enough for solar in there. So what we did was it's called the required available space or something is the definition. And then that definition is further defined, but solar would then exempt. So if a building already has solar, then that area would not be included in the required coverage area. So if a building were covered in 100% solar, they wouldn't have any available space to dedicate to a green roof, so they could do 100% solar.
And is that, you mentioned if they already had solar, that's also true with a new build?
Yeah,
If
correct.
they're doing 100% solar, then they're considered having zero available space?
Correct. And then if they didn't want to do that and they wanted to go with just the percentage that was required, they could do 30% green roof and 70% solar of just that area.
Of just the required
Just
area.
the required area.
Okay. And it sounds like you don't have today for us any kind of comparisons of here's a project before this mandate and here's a project after in terms of what cost. Do you have anything you can kind of share with us on a typical project or a specific project? Have you looked at something like the Carlo Madison Rec Center or something? Yeah, I mean, have you done any of those studies yet, or is that all coming?
That is coming, but I know from having a construction company that solely builds green roofs, I know a lot about what the costs are going to be. And we run typically around $20 to $25 a square foot of installed cost.
So can you, sorry, you gave some of those numbers. Those numbers, sorry, for me, who doesn't work in that world, it's hard to,
It's a
could you
5,000
break down like,
I'm
what does this building, what's the total added cost versus cost per square foot on too many numbers flying around?
I got it.
Does that help?
So if you have a 5-floor building, each floor is 5,000 square feet. You've got a 25,000 square foot building. The rooftop then, if it's a typical rectangular building, is going to be 5,000 square feet of roof space. So that would trigger this mandate, and would go into effect, and on that 25% of the rooftop would need to be green roof or solar or some blend of that 70-30 that we just talked about. So for 30% of that roof, you're looking at 5,000 is going to be roughly 1,500 square feet at $25 a square foot. I don't have a calculator sitting here in front of me, but that's going to be the calculation you would do for how much that green roof would
All
cost.
right, I do have a calculator, so real
So
quick.
1,500 square feet, at
1,500.
$25 a square foot.
So about $37,500
Yeah.
in additional cost for that. Thank you.
Not additional, that's up and above the
Above and beyond what they would have cost. Okay. And but you're also, you said you're doing some specific performers that you'll have in the
Yeah,
future.
we had
about-
we had a meeting, and that was requested out of the meeting we had with an affordable housing unit, and they said, can you do a project cost-benefit analysis for us? And we said, sure.
Perfect.
And so we'll have better numbers for that.
Councilwoman Sussman, did you have
Just a real
something?
quick question, I'm sorry to follow you.
Nope,
Tim.
that's all right, go for it.
So you do green roofs, so
Yeah.
that is your business?
Yeah,
Okay.
we've been here in Denver for 10 years.
Okay. And you said that I was kind of stuck on the, why wouldn't a developer do this? You said that Zeppelin Development thought it was a great idea. Do they have any green roofs?
They do. The new taxi community thing, and the other 30th and Blake Station, whatever they're developing right there, is going to have one as well.
Zeppelin Station.
Zeppelin Station, thank you.
Is that a Zeppelin building? Oh, okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, with that, we're looking right about on time, and we'll bring up the group that is opposed to this. You have 20 minutes to present, so we'll do a quick transition, and then we'll go to questions of
Thank you.
the next group. Thank you very much. All right, go ahead and introduce yourselves and jump right in. And you have 20 minutes. If you go
Thank you.
over that, I'll try and stop you.
Thank you, Council, for this opportunity today. My name is Dave Davia. I work for the Colorado Association of Mechanical, Plumbing, and HVAC Contractors. We have been stewards of the environment and supporters of sustainability and improving our footprint. We've been installing low-flow toilets and high-efficiency furnaces and hot water heaters and air conditioning units here in Colorado for our association for 125 years. And I will let Kathy introduce herself.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting us. My name is Kathy Barsner. I'm the Executive Director for NAIOP Colorado, which is a commercial real estate development association. And I also happen to be a small business owner, and my business is located in the city and county of Denver. It's nice to see familiar faces today. I would just want to say Personally, I've had the opportunity to work over the last several years with Councilwoman Kanish, with Councilman Brooks, on a number of policies and programs that the city has put in place and that the city council has brought forward. Things like the Affordable Housing Stakeholder Group, the Energize Denver Benchmarking Group, and I continue to work on the implementation task force for that group. And then lastly, most recently, the Mayor's 80 by 50 program and the task force working on that. So we have been actively involved in a lot of the programs that the city and county have been bringing forward on a lot of these issues. So we're pleased to have been able to be a part of that. So Dave and I are here as co-chairs of Citizens for a Responsible Denver. And what that is, it's a coalition of residents and businesses in the city and county of Denver that came together in opposition to this particular initiative. We do believe that the cause is a noble one, but we think that this particular solution is not the right solution. A one-size-fits-all mandate that blankets the city doesn't appear to us to be the right path forward. And it also is one that did not include, as we'll talk about in a little bit, an extensive stakeholder process, as we have in some of the other processes that I just mentioned. Just briefly, this is a quick list of some of the organizations that have come out in opposition to this initiative. And you can see from this list, and this list is continuing to grow. As a matter of fact, more people are coming on all the time. But you can see from this list that it's not just builders or real estate finance people. It's the Denver Metro Chamber, it's Visit Denver, it's the Farm Bureau, it's Integro LLC. And Integro, in case you didn't know, is a company that does CPACE financing for energy improvements, and they don't agree with this because it's a blanket mandate.
And this morning, we were notified that Pipefitters 208 and Plumbers Local 3 have both taken a position in opposition to this. While they very much support the breadth and the initiative behind this, they also think it is not the right solution for Denver at this time.
So why are we concerned? As we've mentioned before, the one-size-fits-all mandate has few exceptions. And again, it was created in a silo. While the proponents may have come and had conversations with City Council and with the Mayor's office, it didn't include the stakeholders or partners who may be involved. For instance, they never approached Xcel Energy, who would obviously have to be involved if you add this dramatic solar impact. And it will increase maintenance costs. And as we all know from other areas, so for instance, when the price of a barrel of oil goes up, consumers pay for that in higher gas prices. When the cost for fertilizer goes up that farmers have to use, consumers pay for that in higher produce prices at the grocery store. So while it would be nice if all building owners and investors just thought that they would just cover this, that's not how, unfortunately, the world works. And so it would get passed on. I know you mentioned the HOAs. They would have to pass that on. So even if they were able to ultimately perhaps reduce some expenses, they would have the initial upfront costs that would have to be covered somehow. So Denver has a history of doing things that are environmentally conscious and doing it in a process-driven way. We like to say it's the Denver way. And the Denver way brings together stakeholders and the community in a collaborative environment to develop solutions that work for everyone. And some of those examples we've talked about already: Energize Denver, the 80 by 50 climate plan. And unfortunately, again, the stakeholders, the proponents of this initiative did not bring together all those stakeholders who could have potentially put together a much more impactful program that everyone could have gotten behind.
Yeah, and one thing in closing here, we understand that these initiatives, many initiatives, start either with council or at the mayor's office or citizen groups. I think the folks in our coalition have demonstrated over the years our willingness to participate, our willingness to be at the table, to be partners, our willingness to invest where it makes sense and contribute to campaigns to help move Denver forward. And so we understand that. We understand and applaud the folks who are bringing this to you today as a potential solution. We don't disagree that green roofs shouldn't be investigated, and this type of application shouldn't be thought through and talked through. But the way in which it was conducted and the approach just doesn't make sense for the way in which we are accustomed to doing business with you all. A couple things I just wanted to, let me close on that by saying, if the city developed a citywide priority, that this was something you all supported and wanted us to work on, we would be here at the table with you to help you guide a good policy decision and provide that input. Two things I want to just mention. Earlier, there was a question about exemptions. There's actually 4 criteria. You must meet 2 of the 4 criteria. I can read those for you. I'm sure you have been briefed on those. In addition to that, if 2 of those 4 criteria are met, then you must pay a fee to get an exemption. That exemption is good for the life of that roof. I'm a small business owner here in Colorado. We're replacing a roof because of our May hailstorm much sooner than its life expectancy. And so every time we touch that roof, the same exemption process has to be followed, the same 4 criteria and the same fee being paid. So just wanted to clarify that. The other question that I'd like to clarify is regardless of the footprint of the building and the floor space of the roof, 30%, and again, it's in the initiative, 30% of the rooftop must be in vegetation, at least the way I read it. And so I think there was a question about that. So how do we then kind of help frame this discussion a little bit? Kathy's going to move on to our next slide, just to let you know that when we approach this, you're going to hear numbers, you're going to hear a lot of different what we're going to call it the green roof backbone. That's just the ability to put the roof, the green vegetation on the roof. These costs do not include the cost of, if it's an existing building, do we have to do structural reinforcement in order to hold the added weight that you're going to require to be on the roof? This also does not include any existing building where we may have to run water to water the roof. So we're going to give you a price per square foot. We're going to talk about numbers and try and quantify this a little bit more. So Kathy, if you'd like to.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, it also does not include the actual soil and the vegetation.
Correct.
Because you may choose different types of vegetation, which.
Correct. Thank you. I left that off.
All right. So we're going to give you 3 case studies. Our first one is a case study of a potential grocery store. And we did a grocery store because we know that a lot of you are trying to bring grocers to your districts to address sort of the food desert problem, which is a real problem. And it's been difficult to bring those to your areas. So we looked at bringing a potential grocery store and at an average square footage of 42,000 square feet. At that size, the percentage of the roof that would be mandated would be 20%. So the mandated roof area would be roughly 8,500 square feet. And just to clarify again, that 8,500 square feet, 30% of it would have to be green, and the other 70 of that 8,500 square feet could be solar. So again, the cost of the green roof backbone, and we did the green roof because it's sort of a baseline, because what we've found is the solar is more expensive to install. So we wanted to look at what would be sort of a base cost. So the cost on that particular size roof, the 8560 times the $35 that Dave mentioned for just the backbone, would mean that it would be an additional cost of just under $300,000 for that grocery store. And if you decided you wanted to do the exemption and opt out, you would still have to pay $214,000 for that exemption. And as Dave said, that exemption would be applicable every time the roof was touched, not just when you first built it. So this could have an impact on whether or not you could, in fact, bring a grocery store to your districts. It might make it more difficult than it already is.
And these numbers were provided, I called the Colorado Roofers Association and got costs of what it costs to replace a roof and what it costs to install a green roof. And so these prices are directly from those industry experts.
President Brooks, it's interesting that you mentioned the Carlin Madison Recreation Center because that's our second example. Because we wanted to make sure that you did understand that, that this would apply to city buildings as well, to public buildings. And so if you just look at the Recreation Center, which is at Colfax and Josephine, right next to East High School, the total project size is 62,000 square feet, which would mean 30% of the roof this would apply to. Their approximate roof size, based on the floor levels, is 12,400 square feet, so your mandated roof area would be 3,700. Again, just the cost of your vegetation backbone would be 130,000, and if you opted out of that, it would be 93,000 each time the roof was touched. And with public buildings, if you're passing, that cost has to be covered by the taxpayer. Okay. Our last example is an affordable housing project, which just opened at 11th and Ash. And we wanted to include an affordable housing project because we know that's a hugely important issue to the city and county. It's something you've been working on for a long time, doing everything you can to make these types of projects happen. So this particular project, total size is 140,000 square feet. It has 70 workforce units and 40 senior units in it. Because of its size, 40% of its roof would have to be involved in this. Its approximate roof size is 28,000 square feet, so 11,200 square feet of its roof would be subject to this. So you're looking at approximately $392,000 in additional cost to put this mandate into effect on that building. And if you wanted to exempt out, it would be $280,000, again, every time the roof is touched. So these deals are difficult to get done anyway. The margins are razor thin, and our concern is with this additional cost, maybe some of them couldn't happen, or maybe some of them would be smaller because you might want to try to reduce your overall square footage by perhaps taking out a floor or two, which would then reduce the amount that you would have to have on the roof. A couple of other projects that we just want to bring to your attention. From our sources within Visit Denver, they estimate the additional cost to the convention center of this could be $12 to $15 million. As it relates to the National Western Stock Show, we don't know what those costs could be, but we would encourage you to ask the development team to begin to look at that and to see what that impact could be.
You know, another project that isn't mentioned up here is all the work that's going on at Den. You've got 3 concourses that are being expanded, all of which would qualify. And I'm not a mathematician nor an engineer, but I'm not sure exactly how you install a green roof on the temp apparatus if you guys started messing with the footprint there, if Kim Day and her team started changing that footprint and kind of opening that as a possibility. That slope, that pitch would be interesting marvel at best. So, you know, kind of why we're saying no to Initiative 300. As we've talked about, it is not, this initiative is a one-size-fits-all mandate. We again appreciate the spirit for which the discussion is taking, but we think that there are many unintended consequences that are in this current form. You know, there are more important priorities for taxpayer dollars. You know, we would ask your help if this is an initiative that you feel we should all be working on. You know, we would need your help to gather data on what does this do, what does this impact, the cost of this building, Webb building, and all of your buildings, DPS, Denver Water. What happens when we have watering restrictions going into place? How does that then affect our ability to water the vegetation. And we've mentioned a lack of collaboration and outreach to the impacted parties in industry. So for those reasons, we're asking for a no vote on 300. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Council President Brooks.
Yep. Can you just go back to the list of supporters? I am wondering, I mean, you guys are builders. Do you work with providers, affordable housing providers who are builders as well?
So the answer is yes. We work with our mechanics and our folks who do the installs, work for developers who put together affordable housing units. And those, there are a number of those folks who have been contacted, and I think as the week
Yeah.
progresses.
I'd love to hear, some of those chotos and folks who get funding from the city, love to hear kind of where they are on this and have they done an analysis. I was surprised that, they kind of weren't on with you guys, but just curious if you talked to them.
Yeah, there's a housing conference that's happening this week in the mountains, and they're considering this.
Okay.
Other questions? Could you flip to one of any of your, yeah, one of these? So is the cost of the backbone, is that accounting for, I don't have to do a regular roof, I have to do a green roof, that is additional costs, not just cost of green roof, but you haven't subtracted the cost of regular roof? That is the additional cost? Or is that the cost?
So the cost to, so let me answer the question the way I think I heard it asked and see if that's what you're looking for. The cost to roof a building is anywhere from $6 to $8 a foot. These are numbers that we're not roofers, we're plumbing and HVAC mechanics, so I called that association. And then the cost to put on what we're calling the backbone, so the membrane and the material on the physical roof to be able to accommodate plant material and water would be $35 a foot. Roughly $28 to $35 a foot.
But so you're taking that entire 35. So I guess that's what I'm asking is if there's 6 to 8, did you subtract the 6 to 8 you have to spend anyway to get to 35 or 30? Is this additional or is that total cost?
I believe it is total.
So this is
the
total cost. So this is not subtracted. So the numbers are slightly lower than that because you're going to have to roof it either way.
However, keep in mind, this does not include the cost of the soil or the vegetation or the water.
Correct. This is just to put the backbone up there on the building in order to accommodate this type of application.
Okay. Did you want to jump in on this question?
Yeah,
Councilwoman Sussman.
I think it's a question of whether you're talking about retrofitting a building or building a new one. If you were building a new one, it would be $35. If you were retrofitting, I think I'm understanding, would it cost you $35 more to create a backbone?
Well, I'm saying if
Is
you're
that
going to
what
build a
saying?
building, you have to build a roof. And if your total
Right.
cost to build a building is $1 million, right? Now you have to build a green roof. I'm looking to see, is this just $1 million plus, or have you not subtracted for the fact that you are building a roof either way?
So the figures that the Colorado Roofing Association gave us is to be able to build the roof, it's $35 a square foot to accommodate green material. So
you
So
subtract the eight.
if I was going to retrofit a building, it would cost $6 to $8 a foot for just a flat roof. If I was going to do if I was mandated to do a green roof, he used the figures of about 32 to 35.
Which is the number you
essentially.
use. So really, if
Correct.
you want to see the delta between regular roof and green roof, it's 35 less the 6 to 8.
But you won't have a choice, is the point. You won't be able to subtract what you were normally going to do on a re-roof because you weren't planning, like in my case, we were not planning to, until Mother Nature gave us a hailstorm, we still had plenty of life in the building that I own here in Denver.
And then also on these, so this potential grocery store, I'm trying to get a feeling. So we have this amount. What percentage of the total, right? $300,000 on $1 million building is different than on a 10 million, on 100 million. So did you have, like, for these examples, like, what is the total cost? What percentage increase of because these were new build case studies, I guess.
Right. We don't have that today, but we can get that for you.
Okay. I think it'd be helpful to have, this was a little confusing, I think, because it's trying to compare, okay, it's going to cost me $1 million to do this. What's it going to cost me to do this now with the green roof, both on new construction and retrofit? I would anticipate the percentage increase is a lot higher on retrofit than on new, but I don't know. It's hard to tell from these numbers. And what percentage is that? Are we talking about a 30% increase in your total project budget, or are we talking about a 1% increase in your total project? It's hard to tell from.
Part of why we looked at new construction is that the retrofit is more difficult to understand because of the potential for shoring up the roof in order to be able to handle the additional weight that it's not currently handling. And those you would have to do on an individual building by building basis because they're so different.
Okay. Are there other questions? I have one more question, but if you don't mind, I'd like to bring you guys back up, and I'd like to.
That was my question.
Oh,
I
yeah.
asked both of them one thing.
Okay, so yeah, so come back up, and that way we can get both sides on a couple questions. And you have a question you want to ask, Council President, to
Yeah, I
both
was
sides?
just, to the opposers first, did you have any, I didn't know if I saw the endorsement list, but my question is specific to endorsement. It isn't endorsements, but it's political endorsements. Did you guys have any political endorsements? And if you all had political endorsements?
From someone officially, like inside the city?
Yep, or anywhere, I mean.
So we do have the energy, the Environmental Energy and Study Group from Denver Democrats and their Public Policy Committee. We also have 350 Denver, Colorado Native Plant Society,
Okay.
Grow West.
You did say those. What about elected officials?
Colorado Roofing as well. What's that?
Any elected officials?
No.
Okay.
So, so what I will tell you is we're working on a growing list. A statement was issued by Denver yesterday, by the mayor's office, of a position of not supporting Initiative 300. And so we can, I'm sure you got copies of that, but happy to follow up and provide you copies of that as well.
Okay, thanks.
Councilman Lopez.
No, I just wanted to thank, if it's appropriate, I just wanted to thank folks for coming and informing us of the two sides. It's good to really sit here and have the Q&A. My response is going to be, if only endorsements voted. Right, so, no, I just wanted to express that. I don't want to be dismissive. And I would love to know where you're looking at putting grocery stores.
Trader Joe's.
We're having a hard time getting them anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't see them in poor neighborhoods anyway, green roof or not.
Yeah.
So,
Councilman Cashman.
Can you go back to the Carla Madison, just because that's the building I'm a little more familiar with? So the backbone is 130,000. And as far as the 93,000 each time, I think if something like this passes, you build the green roof because it makes no sense to deal with the exemption. But my question is, 40-something million for that building, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
North.
okay, so last I heard, I think was 43.
No, I think we're close to 60 now.
60? Okay, so we're it's a beautiful building, by the way, for those listening. No, I'm dead serious. That is going to be an incredible facility.
have orange
So,
plants.
but, so whether it's 40 million or 60 million, where we'd be adding 130,000 to that. My concern, as far as, you know, I'm not all rosy blue sky on this yet, is the difficulty in retrofitting. You know, the upfront costs on a new building, I don't have nearly as much trouble wrapping my arms around, but I'm still not at a comfort level on that portion of it, because it can get complex, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So we've estimated that probably only about 15% of the buildings that are already in existence would actually be able to handle a retrofit. So we assume that they would do the solar option instead.
Yes. Okay.
That leads into my question, to walk me through and from both sides' perspective. So you have a building that, a historic building that needs a new roof, and they can't handle it, right? So your choices are either you do all kinds of foundation work or what are you do that, you do solar, you pay a fee. Is there any just exemption, or they will incur one of those? Walk me through what happens there.
Sure. So we were also hoping that that would include with the exemptions to city planning, like, for whatever reason. And like I said, we aren't city planning experts. We don't know what they might want to get exemptions for. So we wanted to allow that to be a little open-ended.
So as the author of this, your vision for there's a historic building that meets the criteria but can't handle it, what are their options?
The solar or to be exempted.
And pay the fee to be exempted, or be exempted without having to pay a fee because if a hailstorm comes every year, then they
Right.
pay a fee. Is that true?
I don't know, I suppose. I didn't really think of it as that way originally. I thought that would be kind of like a one-time occurring fee.
How is it written in the bill? Is it recurring, or is it every time you
Doesn't
touch
say
it?
recurring.
Every time the building is touched, the roof is touched.
It says at the time of roof replacement.
Which would be every time the roof is replaced. So if you have your example of hail every year and you have to replace every year, it would be every year.
But if there was a green roof, they wouldn't have to replace every year.
We'd never do.
And this is an ordinance, correct? So,
Building code.
Building code ordinance, yeah.
well, what we're talking here is an ordinance,
No, it's a
It's
ballot.
an
initiated
It's a
ordinance.
ballot.
But
And this is so-
No, it's an initiated ordinance.
Right, it's initiated ordinance, so if it were to pass, in 6 months, we would be able to iron out whatever needed iron out, whether it was exemptions.
It's
or
like
whatnot.
I-300, yeah.
Is that a 6-month, or I thought with I-300 it was
6
2
months.
years before we could?
6 months.
Six
I think it's 6 months.
6 months, but I believe with 10,
Madam City Attorney?
with 10 votes, I think.
That's right, it can't be changed for 6 months. My name is Kirsten Crawford, Legislative Counsel, I apologize. But yes, it would not be able to be amended for 6 months.
And
for
after
6
6 months, it could be
That's
any
right.
amendment, anything? Sorry, Councilwoman Sussman and then Council President.
To ask the proponents, one of the concerns was that your outreach to people in the trades, people in the construction, the developers, to the city, to the others, can you tell me why you decided not to sit down and talk about that?
It wasn't really a decision to not do it. It was more of a lack of understanding from my part. I'm a full-time manager at Red Robin. I work 50 hours a week. I did this from a citizen standpoint. I tried to cover all my bases. I clearly stepped on some toes. I definitely apologize for that. If I did this a different way, I would most certainly reach out to them. But that was a complete oversight on my part, honestly.
Would you be interested in doing that now and
Yeah, absolutely.
thinking
I
about-
wish that would have came up through all my discussions, but yeah, it didn't.
Do you think you will be doing that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's important.
Council President?
Yep, we talked about the International Building Code, and so, and maybe this is for the attorney, but what part of this will be in the International Building Code, or will it just be in ordinance?
Are you asking me or her? She might know better.
I would have to check with someone in the building department.
Okay.
It does mention specific parts of the International Building Code in the bill itself that it references.
Yeah, I'd love to get some clarity on that, because at that point, whether we get it back in 6 months or not, it doesn't matter, because we don't touch the International Building Code in that way. And so,
I mean, similar to our bathroom bill, there are places where we say International Building Code says this, but we are going to go in a different direction here. So I'm assuming that this would amend a place where we vary from the International Building Code, which we do have authority to do in any place where.
but there's no clarity on that right now. I don't think we have clarity on which we have authority over and which we do not have authority. That's all I'm asking.
This would affect the Denver Building Code. I don't know if that answers the question at all.
President Brooks, I will certainly look into that. I'll check with the building department.
Great. And if we could get it around to all of us as council, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely.
All right, any other questions?
Just saying, closing, thank you for the time. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate your interest in this. I would tell you that I'm former elected official in a city north of here, passing, public policy, making public policy decisions that are not fully vetted is a difficult position to be in. And I think that's where we find ourselves today. And so, thank you. Happy to answer any questions. We'll follow up with what we committed to do.
And if you have any other questions, please let us know, and we'd be happy to provide whatever information we can.
Yep. Just one last question, would love to get that San Francisco ordinance and information.
You should have it on.
Is it in the,
Yeah,
okay,
it's in our
great,
hands that we sent that. We'll have a Denver-specific one, like I said, within the next 7 days.
perfect.
All right, thank you all very much for being here, answering questions and presenting, and seeing
Thank you.
nothing else on the agenda. We are adjourned.